Blackness, silence. A single streetlight flickers to life, casting an orange glow on wet asphalt. Rain falls, relentless, drumming a staccato rhythm on the pavement. The air is thick with the smell of ozone and something else, something metallic like blood. A low hum vibrates in the distance, growing louder, then fading again. This is not a night for walks. This is a night for secrets. This is a night for forgetting. Eleanor, the librarian, loved the smell of old books. The scent of aged paper and ink was like a portal to another time, a bridge to the past. She often found herself lost in the pages, imagining the lives of those who had read the same books before her. She ran her fingers over the spines, each one a story waiting to be remembered. The texture of the leather and the roughness of the cloth covers were familiar to her, like old friends. Each book held a piece of history, a fragment of someone's life, and Eleanor cherished every one of them. Tonight, the library was empty, the silence broken only by the ticking clock. The dim light cast long shadows on the walls, creating an atmosphere of mystery and nostalgia. Eleanor enjoyed these quiet moments when she could hear her own thoughts and feel the presence of the past all around her. She glanced at a photo on her desk, a younger Eleanor, smiling arm in arm with a man whose face was blurry, indistinct. The photograph was old and worn, the edges frayed from years of handling. It was a relic from a time she could barely remember, a time that seemed like a dream. She felt a chill, a sudden fear. The library, usually a place of comfort and solace, now seemed eerie and foreboding. The shadows seemed to move and the silence was oppressive. Eleanor's heart raced as she tried to recall the man in the photograph, but his face remained a blur. Who was that man? And why couldn't she remember? The questions gnawed at her, filling her with a sense of unease. She had spent her life surrounded by stories, but now she was faced with a mystery of her own. The answers seemed just out of reach, hidden in the shadows of her memory. Sergeant Miller patrolled the empty streets, his footsteps echoing in the deserted city. He'd known everyone in this town once. He pulled out a worn photo, a woman smiling, a young girl perched on her lap, his wife, his daughter. But their faces were fading, their features blurring like a watercolor left in the rain. He felt a pang of fear, sharp and cold. Who were they? Clara, the once famous actress, stared at her reflection in the mirror. Her youthful beauty was fading, replaced by a stranger with haunted eyes. She picked up a silver-framed photograph, a group of people laughing, their faces turned towards the camera. She recognized no one. Panic welled up inside her. Had she imagined her entire life? Was she nothing but a ghost in her own memories? Eleanor found a name in an old newspaper article, a name that sent a jolt of recognition through her: Sergeant Miller. She had been combing through the archives for hours, her eyes scanning countless names and stories, but this one stood out. It was as if a distant memory had suddenly come into sharp focus. The article was old, yellowed with age, but the name was clear: Sergeant Miller. She couldn't shake the feeling that this name was important, that it held the key to something she had long forgotten. He was a policeman, the article said. Maybe he could help. Eleanor's mind raced with possibilities. Who was Sergeant Miller? Why did his name seem so familiar? She needed to find out more. The article mentioned that he had been involved in a high-profile case many years ago, a case that had captivated the entire town. Perhaps if she could learn more about that case, she could uncover the reason for her sudden recollection. Miller, meanwhile, stumbled upon a playbill while searching for clues to his forgotten life. The attic was filled with dust and cobwebs, but he was determined to find something, anything, that could help him piece together his past. The playbill was old, its edges frayed, but the name on it caught his eye: Clara. It was a name that stirred something deep within him, a flicker of a memory that he couldn't quite grasp. The star of the show, Clara, a name that sparked a flicker of familiarity. He remembered her face, her voice, but the details were hazy. Who was she? And why did she seem so important? He needed to find her, to understand the connection between them. The playbill was a clue, a piece of the puzzle that was his forgotten life. He had to find her. The streets were dark and unfamiliar, but he walked with purpose. He had a map, old and worn, but it was all he had to guide him. Each step brought him closer to the truth, to the answers he so desperately sought. The name Clara echoed in his mind, a beacon in the darkness. Clara, lost in a maze of forgotten memories, found a library card tucked away in an old purse. She had been searching for something, anything that could help her make sense of the fragments of her past. The library card was old, its edges worn, but the name on it was clear: Eleanor. It was a name that seemed to hold a lifeline, a connection to a past she couldn't fully remember. The name on the card: Eleanor. A lifeline. Clara held the card in her hands, her mind racing with questions. Who was Eleanor? Why did her name seem so important? She needed to find her, to understand the connection between them. The library card was a clue, a piece of the puzzle that was her forgotten life. As she stood there, holding the card, she felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, she was one step closer to uncovering the truth. Section 6, Vanishing Act. They found each other, drawn together by their shared terror. Eleanor, Miller, and Clara. Three souls adrift in a sea of forgotten faces. But as they shared their stories, a horrifying truth emerged. People they spoke to forgot them minutes later. Photos, letters, everything that proved their existence. Vanishing. They were being erased, their lives fading like whispers in the wind. Section 7, Whispers in the Void. Days turned into nights. The forgotten few sought answers in the echoes of their past, each clue leading to a dead end. They were like ghosts, their presence unnoticed, their voices unheard. The city around them continued its relentless rhythm, oblivious to their plight. The hum returned, louder now, vibrating through their bones. It seemed to emanate from everywhere and nowhere at once. Section 8, The Convergence. Drawn by the hum, they found themselves back on that rain-soaked street beneath the flickering streetlight. The air crackled with unseen energy. The hum intensified, resolving into a high-pitched whine. The rain seemed to stop in mid-air, the droplets hovering, suspended. And then, from the swirling mist, a figure emerged. Section 9, The Apparition. In the dimly lit room, the narrator's voice carried a weight of foreboding, setting the stage for the chilling tale that was about to unfold. Tall, skeletal, with eyes that glowed with an eerie light, the figure stood before them. It was as if the very essence of fear had taken a physical form, manifesting in the mist that swirled around it. The air grew colder, and a palpable sense of dread filled the room. It spoke, its voice a hollow rasp that seemed to echo from the depths of the abyss. Each word it uttered sent shivers down their spines, as if the sound itself carried a dark, ancient power. "You have been chosen," it said, its voice echoing in the silence. "Chosen to remember." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning and mystery. What did it mean to be chosen? And what were they supposed to remember? The figure reached out, its touch sending a jolt of icy energy through their bodies. It was as if the cold of the grave had seeped into their very souls, freezing them in place. They could feel the chill spreading, numbing their senses and clouding their thoughts. Images flooded their minds, memories not of their past, but of the future. These were not mere visions, they were vivid, almost tangible experiences. They saw themselves in a world that was both familiar and alien, a place where the rules of reality seemed to have been rewritten. A future where the world was shrouded in darkness, where the sun no longer rose and the stars had vanished from the sky. The landscape was a desolate wasteland, filled with the ruins of what once was. The air was thick with the scent of decay and the echoes of a civilization long gone, where humanity was no more than a distant memory. The cities stood empty, their streets silent and lifeless. Nature had begun to reclaim what was left, with vines and roots breaking through the concrete, as if trying to erase the last traces of human existence, a future they were now destined to prevent. The weight of this revelation settled upon them, filling them with a sense of purpose and urgency. They knew that the path ahead would be fraught with danger and uncertainty, but they were resolved to change the course of destiny. They would fight to bring back